This game is incredible. The Magnus Carlsen drama is not stopping this Qatar Masters. He was playing with black today in round 4. His opponent is 25-15, Pranesh M, a 17-year-old Indian Grandmaster, and this game has everything. Truly shocking. So we see e4 on the board, and Magnus goes g6, the modern defense. So again, he's not afraid to mix it up with the black pieces, despite his hammering 2 days ago. So now we get d4, d6, knight c3, and pawn c6, the third pawn move, no pieces developed. Now we get bishop e3, knight f6, another provocative move, but you don't want to kick on with e5 too soon. The knight hits g4, so f3 bolsters the centre, takes control of that square, and b5 from Magnus. Classic queenside counterplay, threatening b4, driving the knight back. And you can go a3, queen d2, play a little bit more slowly. But g4 from Pranesh, taking the fight to the world champion. Sorry, former world champion. I keep saying that. Where is Ding, by the way? Ding's just gone off the radar. Like, dude needs to play some chess if I'm going to actually remember he's the world champion now. So pawn h5 from Magnus. Now it can be a bad idea to push pawns where your opponent is attacking, but in this instance you haven't yet castled, and after g5 from white, very natural move, taking the space, well, the knight drops back, and after f4, top computer move, knight b6, knight f3, b4 driving this one back, knight e2, well, d5 starts to reveal the point of some of Magnus's play, because after e5 is played, although white's got all this lovely space, cramping black, Magnus does have some light squares to play with here, and bishop g4 is very logical. He wants e6, c5 at the right moment, so his position is quite easy to play actually. So bishop g2 covers the knight, which was attacked. We get pawn e6, and now white provokes the bishop to capture the knight with h3. Wasn't the most accurate move. You'll see this evaluation bar on the left react a bit because the computer wants b3, stopping some knight c4 hops. But h3 played, this was captured, bishop takes back, Magnus develops. Now again, you see the bar react. You know, the computer wants knight c4, keeps wanting that move over the next few moves. But h4 now from Pranesh, not forced. He could have just captured there. I mean, it weakens more light squares, but he's trying to lock everything down over here so that after bishop e7, castles, his king's fairly secure, and he can try and get some play over on the queen side. But Magnus is the one with the edge there. So rook c8, Magnus just holding off on this one. He's not rushing. The threat's often worse than the execution. And now white goes for a bit of play with pawn c3, looking to break out. And now if c5, well, you can take here, pawn recaptures, and this is a much better version for white. You know, you can go b3, take control of c4, stymie this pawn, and it's hard to bring these pieces into the game. Meanwhile, white can maybe build up on the c file, or sometimes go, whoops, for these f5 breaks, try and attack the black king. So no c5 from Magnus. He goes knight c4, the bishop drops back, covers this b2 pawn, and now we get captures on c3, pawn recaptures, and rook b8. Magnus switching where that rook is lined up against, and he goes for some nice dark squared play now. So king h1, just a prophylactic move, bit of a waiting move. Queen a5 from Magnus, going for this dark squared strategy. And now the top computer move here is pawn a4, adding some control to a3 via the rook on a1. But we see queen d3 played, and it allows Magnus to go bishop a3. He wants to remove this one and then gain access to the b2 square for his rook or knight, that kind of thing. So that's why bishop e3. White decides to jump away, and now Magnus's next move is not precise. he swaps this amazing knight for this bad bishop on e3. Now, why does he do it? Well, we're going to see, but better was to actually hold the tension, maybe invade on b2, b2, or jump with the knight, or you can castle, that kind of thing. But okay, after captures, queen captures, knight b6 is Magnus's point. He had two knights fighting for the same square, the c4 square, and after rook a b1, he's then ready to hop. But he holds off. Again, sorry, there's a tactical reason. The rook's unprotected. So he starts with king d7, connects the rooks, and now this is where we see really a double brilliancy from the white player Pranesh. Now his first one comes here, and it's all connected with the fact that Magnus is getting ready to hop and then bring this squeeze on the queen side. So can you guess the move that Pranesh played here? Blows things open, gives him amazing counterplay. So well done if you found the move of pawn to f5. I mean, it's kind of the only option, right? When I say it blows things open, it's basically the only pawn break other than c4, which makes no sense. Now, the point is you're trying to rip open some lines. If you take like this, which Magnus didn't do, then this pawn's very weak. You know, knight f4's coming. Yes, you open a line towards your own king, but okay, that is an important pawn. Then white's got some passers. This is why Magnus didn't do that. So he takes with this pawn instead, but now we get e6 check, a double pawn sacrifice. Fantastic play from the youngster, because knight f4 is the follow-up. You hit two pawns, so you're guaranteed to win one back. And so Magnus slides this rook across and defends this most critical pawn. And he went with this rook and not this rook, because if you went with this rook, left this one in the corner, then it runs into knight g6 with tempo, not good. So bishop c4, sorry, e2 now played, covering c4, the knight hopping. So Magnus goes bishop d6, targets that knight. He'd love to chop it off. So white takes here, wins back one of those pawns, and look at the e5 square. Very tender, very juicy. And there's now this connected past g pawn. Black's got the f pawn, but it's a bit more well protected. So knight c4 now played by Magnus. I mean, jumping back a move, his pieces are kind of tied down. He doesn't have a lot of options. He could maybe go queen a3, but it's sort of a waiting move. You don't ever want to take the pawn, or the rook slides and then crashes through here. So Magnus plays something active, but it does change the pawn structure. This one recaptures, and now knight e5 check. Now Magnus doesn't take this one because, again, after this pawn structure change, although the computer says this is zeros and level, it looks more harmonious for white because you've got more space. This is running a bit faster than this ever is, you feel. The rook's on a line down towards the king. Queen f3 could be coming, pressuring here and here. Okay, there's queen d5, but still, white's got these inroads which are tricky to work out, and the g-pawn. So no bishop takes. King c7 played. Knight f7 now, probing, pressuring here. g6 could be coming. The queen is opened. So we get queen d5 check. The king sidesteps. Pawn f4 now, and Magnus is trying to drum up his own counterplay. Queen f2, and now after takes, rook recaptures. Magnus plays such a natural move, but it's not the best. What should he do? Well, according to the engine, pawn f3. Now it looks a bit counterintuitive. The rook can slide back, the pawn's going to drop. But e5 is the point. You're opening the queen on this and that kind of thing. This is how the main line goes with the engine. Check, rook captures. You get something like this. The pawns are level, and the computer says you can hold a draw with rook e4, and you're sort of coming after this stuff, blah, blah, blah. The king gets over just in time to this pawn. But well, there was no f3 played. We saw rook f8 instead. Hits that knight. Magnus probably expected it to move away, taking here. Then he's fine. But this is where the second brilliancy is unleashed by Pranesh, playing out of his skin. He plays the brilliancy of queen to b2. He's leaving this knight hanging, because if it's captured, it's not even this which is winning, picking up the rook. But queen b8 is actually leading to mate. This is how the line goes, and that is a checkmate using also the pawn, which covers this square. So you cannot touch the knight, it's immune. So Magnus goes c5, covering b7 now with his queen. It is the best move. The rook still covers b8, so there's no invasion squares. Now we get knight d6, best move. The king recaptures, and queen a3. Brilliant move, using the fact that the pawn is now pinned. You're threatening here and here, nasty stuff. So Magnus goes queen f5, looking to invade, but now check. The king comes forward. The queen checks again from b7. The king's forced back. Now takes with check. Queen recaptures. King f1 played because the king was in check. This is the best square to step to. You know, you don't want to go to the corner. Allow black to go queen d5 check, get the queens off. Magnus now goes queen d5 anyway, and this is an absolutely fantastic defensive move because Magnus is in a real bind. So many threats now for white to be taking this pawn and invade, and white now plays a really natural looking move of queen b4 check, picking up an undefended rook. But actually best was queen a6 check. Now if Magnus goes king e5 like we saw in the game, then there's rook b5. The queen skewered to the king, it drops off the board. If after queen a6 check you block with the queen, well now you check from the d file and the king's given the runaround and the pawn drops with check. The attack rages on. And finally, if you don't block with the queen, but you step back to the back rank somewhere, well again, the pawn drops with check, the attack continues. So queen a6 check, the move to play, the way to go. But this is so natural. You check from here. Magnus is really down on time, as you can see. Now he runs with the king. Now check. King f5, the rook drops, king g4. Magnus is an entire rook down here. But it's superb calculation from him because he's seen that the activity of the king and the pawn should give him enough for a draw. However, you still have to find that draw. Now, what is the threat here? Well, if we play a useless move for white, like pawn a3, then it's mate in 6 because there's queen f3 check, the king sidesteps, and king g3 threatens mate, and you just cannot stop it. Not without giving the rook up and then still the mate's coming soon, or giving the queen up right and still the mate's coming soon. So you cannot allow this queen f3 check business. So that's why rook e2. Now if the queen checks, well you can sidestep with the king. The computer gives this zeros, perpetual with take here and that kind of thing, but you know, white's surviving. So after rook e2, Magnus doesn't check, he goes for pawn f3 instead, and again this rook is in a predicament. If it comes here, you walk into mate. If it comes here, well now you walk into another kind of mate, delivered like this. So the rook can't come anywhere this way on the short side, obviously can't come here, come to c2, well you get check and it drops off the board. So finally, what if you go to b2, try and save it like that? Well now there's check, the king goes, and you can swing the queen this way. And again, there's all kinds of things, you know, there's a check here preparing to win the rook. If you march like this, then there's check. If rook blocks, this is no good because now it drops. Long lines, right? But the long story short, you just can't save this rook once it gets attacked with f3. So that's why queen f6 targets the e6 pawn and forces Magnus to now take that material with check. The king captures. Now we get the check delivered here. King f2. Now you can start checking and perpetual the position, but we get a couple of pawn moves inserted, and now the perpetual comes. This pawn's going too fast. Magnus can't mess about any longer, so he makes the draw in this position. The white king cannot escape the checks. Fantastic fight here. First by Pranesh to put the pressure on, find the brilliancies, but then by Magnus to find the only defense, very low on time in a tough position. Brilliant game. I hope you enjoyed. See another epic game of chess. Check out the video on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.